Hi, this is Doug Higgins. I feel like I should apologize in advance. I showed up to the Flaggstaff Roundup with a brand new phone, and I thought I had downloaded the proper app for recording, the same app that I've used at previous roundups, but unfortunately it was not the same app, and it had to be converted in order for me to get it into my editing software. So during that conversion we lost a great deal in terms of fidelity. I promise you I will have this issue addressed before the Kaibab Roundup, which is the last weekend in June. If you would like more information, feel free to call me. You'll be able to see that in the YouTube comment box. Thank you.
Okay. Without further ado, let's give a Flaggstaff welcome to our speakers straight from Las Vegas, Nevada, and the Stray Dogs group. Scott W.
As long as you want.
Generally it's around.
All right. Oh, this is great. This is great. My name's Scott. I'm an alcoholic. Great to be here tonight. Thank you. I want to thank the committee and JR for asking me to be here. You know, it's an honor and a privilege to be able to do anything when I'm asked to do something for Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, my answer is always yes. I have a debt today that I will never be able to repay, and I know that from the bottom of my heart. So I'm really glad to be here, and I want to especially, I love what they were just saying about the committee. My wife and I are on several of these Roundup committees, and I know how much it takes to put one of these things together. And so you guys have done a great job. This is our first time here, and we absolutely love it. We're going to be back next year, so I am super grateful. Thank you to the committee and Joe. So I recognize some faces here from Beaver. A few of the guys I recognize from some of these summers, and that's another one of these campouts we go to every year. So my wife and I this week, we were planning on coming up. We heard about this I was asked about 2 months ago, and we were planning on coming up. And so this week, my wife's car broke down on Monday. And so I said, okay, well, I'll pick you up at the shop. We dropped her car off, and I have a 2020 Ford Super Duty. And 20 minutes later, my truck broke down on the highway. And so that's what we were going to pull our trailer up here with this weekend. And I just got the news this morning they want $15,000 for a new fuel pump and fuel system for my 3-year-old truck. I was really happy about that. But what do? We say our prayers, we get in the truck, we load up, suit up, show up, and here we are. So anyway, my sobriety date's February 2nd, 2011. I'm very grateful for that date. And I know a lot of you are too, and I know there's a lot of police departments and law enforcement agencies that are pretty thrilled with that too. I'm much safer to have around people, sober. I'm one of those guys that is fits that category right out of the big book of dangerously antisocial when I drink and use, and that's basically how my story goes. So. You know, I grew up in a really great household. My mother and father were top-notch people. My father was a bank executive. My mother was a school teacher. And, I think I saw my father have, he'd buy these little 6-packs of Olympia beer, the little short cans, and they maybe would drink 1 or 2 a year, something crazy like that. And so I never ever witnessed them being drunk or I didn't come from that. So being the black sheep of the white sheep family, my 2 sisters were really good girls too, and I'm the one. Everyone else went right, I went left, and it started really early for me. I used to go spend my summers with my grandmother and grandfather in a little place called Auburn, California. And so what happened there is I would pretty much be left to my own devices. You know, I got a .22 rifle, and I wore the same clothes for a couple weeks, and I hung out up there pretty much unsupervised. Well, one afternoon I ended up getting into my grandfather's Sour Mash whiskey. And I think I was 8 or 9 years old at this time, and we hear this all the time from the podium. We hear how that first drink felt. And I 100% have heard this, and I understand it. It was at that time when I absolutely realized that this was everything that I ever wanted in my life. I'm the kid in grade school, second grade. I'm horribly maladjusted to life. I don't belong anywhere. I don't belong with my family. I don't belong in school. I don't like these kids. I'm not dressed right. I'm not smart enough. All those things. I'm the kid standing in the corner of the playground while all these other kids without a worry or trouble in the world are out playing and having a good time. And I'm just absolutely wrapped so tight that I can't possibly enjoy anything. You know, my sisters told me that I was adopted, and then they said I was from outer space, you know, and that didn't help either. And so this maladjustment in my life continued. And this continues well into my adult life. This is a pattern that'll, you know, keep rearing its ugly head. And so what happens with that is, you know, I needed a drink like in the second grade. So when I had my first drink, all of a sudden everything seemed like it was going to be okay. I felt that spring unwind a little bit. I felt the tension and the nervousness go away. Now, I didn't turn into a daily drinker, you know, at that point, but I knew that there was something that I liked about it. And I'd sneak some once in a while. I'd do something once in a while. And, of course, you know, other get-togethers and family reunions, there was a lot of half-empty things sitting around. And I realized then that, you know, I liked drinking. I really liked drinking. And so this behavior carries on, you know, when I get to high school, and, you know, a keg of beer, 30 gallons of beer was like $29. And a set of taps, I was the one to acquire the set of taps. And so I was always invited to these parties, but I'm the guy that shows up on Friday and doesn't leave till Monday. Everyone else can get their stuff together and go about their business. I'm not that guy. I you know, and usually a police are involved or ambulances or something because there's these terrible things that happen when I drink. This is another pattern that carried on well into my adult life. Bad things happen when I put alcohol in my body. So this kind of carries on through my life. I had a couple. I think I had back-to-back DUIs when I was 18. I've had 11 total. At one point, I finally had to just stop driving because the legal ramifications were just getting too much, and so I had to kind of give up driving, and it was easier for me to drink because I couldn't walk most of the time anyway. And I turned into this socially unacceptable blackout drinker. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what I'm going to do. And this started in high school. I can remember coming home one night, and it was always real funny to get poured out on the lawn. We lived in a very affluent neighborhood up in Reno, Nevada. And you get poured out on the lawn 1 or 2 in the morning and come staggering into the house. And so this is the thing. And so I get into the house one of these nights, and I'm hungry, and my father's sitting at the kitchen table, you know, with a Marlboro and a cup of coffee, and it's late, and he's been waiting up. You know, and I didn't think about a lot of these things till after I got sober. But, you know, they were worried about me, and they didn't know what to do about me. And so I had something to eat. I went to bed, and I got up that next morning. My father's still, you know, he's up early and he wants to talk. And of course, I don't want to talk. You know, I don't want to talk about any of this or anything that they're suggesting. And he says, you know what? Your mother and I are really worried. And they were pretty prim, proper people too. He says, we don't know what the F is wrong with you. And I'm like, oh, it'll be okay. I don't know what you mean. He says, no, really, we don't know what's wrong with you. I said, well, it'll be all right. He said, no, I watched you come into the house last night, eat a can of cat food out of the refrigerator, and go to bed. I didn't think anything. I didn't know what I was eating, and I didn't remember any of it, so it didn't bother me much at all. I wasn't hungry anymore. But that's how pathetic and bad it is. And so, you know, and this carries on into my adult life too. Pretty soon I don't know what I'm going to do. Don't ask sober Scott what drunk Scott did last night. Because I have no idea what happens when I drink. And I don't have a couple drinks and stop. I drink to excess until I black out and there's problems. I'm either in jail, in the hospital, or you know, it's just one of these things. We all have similar stories. And so this kind of starts happening for me. I get to this point out of high school. I don't really, and I had some really good jobs out of high school, and I'm working for one of the top 10 construction companies on the West Coast, and I have that opportunity to be one of the youngest superintendents of the company, and I have another job opportunity to become a project manager. I've been a carpenter all my life. I was blessed with a trade. I'm very good at what I did, but But I'm the guy, and I get hired by every construction company in town. Vegas is a pretty big city. I get hired by every construction company in town at one point or another. I either fire myself or show up drunk or don't go to work. So I'm the guy that pulls up and falls out of my truck at 7 in the morning because I just left the bar. You know, they put up with it as long as they could because I was so good at what I did. And, you know, and back in the day it was pretty acceptable, you know, to do your work. If you performed your work well. It's not like the work we perform well today. But so what happens is, you know, I end up unemployable. I'm unemployable at this point, and you know, there's a lot of construction companies in Las Vegas, and I'm actually trespassed and blackballed from most of the construction companies in town. I can't just go across the street and go to work anywhere like I used to. You know, I could quit or get fired, and I could go right across the street with my hard hat and my badge and go right to work. And pretty soon that started ending for me. You know, my reputation was preceding me. There wasn't anyone trying to hire me out from under another company anymore. The phone just stopped ringing. You know, and I don't have a problem. I don't see anything wrong with the way I'm living. So what happens on one of these jobs is I'm piece working, framing, you know, for a couple bucks. It didn't pay very good, but I'm taking what I can get. I've still got a vehicle then, and I'm still able to work, you know, a little bit. Piecework, construction, you can kind of work when you can. You either make your money or you don't. At the end of the week, if you did your work, they'll pay you. And so that's kind of how it happened. There's a guy on the job one day that I was just really torn up from the night before. And I know this is Alcoholics Anonymous, but drugs are a big part of my story. And this guy here says, here, why don't you try some of this? And it was that old brown bathtub crank that they were doing back in the 80s. And I did some of that, and it was on. Anything I've ever tried, I've done to excess. And it was on for me. And this is like the beginning of the end for me. Now I can drink. Now I can do these drugs. And I'm still able to go to work a little bit. I'm able to perform a little bit when everything's good. And, you know, till someone shows me something else. And that's exactly what happened. You know, in the 70s, the 80s, my cousin was a coke dealer down in San Francisco. And he was dating the daughter of the Colombian consulate. And so we were getting this stuff from San Francisco that had burlap marks on the outside of these. You know, it was insane during the 80s, this cocaine. And so I got into that. And next thing you know, I'm doing this to excess. And the only problem with that is cocaine costs a lot of money. And so I work when I can. I do as much as I can. And it's just this vicious cycle of getting fired, working, staying up, locked in the closet. I think I was in the bathroom for 14 years. So, you know, what ends up happening for me, so here I'm in Las Vegas. Finally, I've lost both my parents. I'm living with my mother. I'm 40 something years old, and I'm sleeping on my mother's couch like any good alcoholic. And, you know, I can't work. I can't do anything anymore. I'm trying to take care of her because she's ill. And I'm not even doing that. You know, I'm just a horrible individual. And I just have absolutely no self-esteem, nothing going for me whatsoever. It's just an end, getting to the end. My mother passes away, and my sister has to throw me out of the house because I've been there for 6 months after my mother died. I'm stealing power from the neighbor. I got a house full of people. There's nothing good going on in this house. So she finally gets me out of there, and this is one of the biggest resentments I had when I first started working steps with a sponsor. How dare she throw me out of my house? I'd never paid a dime for and had lived there for many, many years. And so what ends up happening then is, you know, I lived across the street in my neighbor's backyard for about 4 months after that. Until finally she wants her backyard back, and she says, you know, I really want my yard back. I really want you to get you and all your junk out of here. And so I walk off down the street. I walked off down the street with a backpack. I'm in Las Vegas. I'm down in an area near Rancho and Vegas Drive, and I'm homeless. Now, I didn't come from any kind. I came up from, it was a good family. I had never been homeless. I had never thought about being homeless. I never thought it would never happen to me. And I don't understand how it happened to me. I want to think that I have some serious medical condition, like a brain tumor or some sort of a condition that has me insane. The last thing I want to think about is being an alcoholic, something that easy. And one of the worst things you can call me is an alcoholic, because people actually knew this long before I did. And so, one of the things that happened was being homeless. I'm homeless and on the streets of Las Vegas for almost 3 years. And I'm just done. I don't shower for weeks at a time. I don't dare get a glimpse of myself in a mirror or in a window as I walk by. I'm so ashamed and I'm so disgusted with what's happened to my life and I don't know any way out. I wake up in the morning, I come out of a blackout in the morning, I'm sleeping in the dirt, wrapped up in an old tarp, and I wake up that morning and I go down to the store and I hope that I can beg, borrow, or steal enough for a couple beers to get well, because I'm sick and I'm shaken and I'm just in full-blown alcoholism at this point, just full-blown. Nobody wants me around, and that's one of the reasons why I'm so grateful I get asked to speak at these days, because it's an honor and a privilege to be asked to be somewhere these days. It used to be if I showed up at your door, you should be calling the police department or some sort of law enforcement because it's not healthy. And so that's one of the things that I am grateful for today. And so what happens is now I'm homeless and, my beard is down to here. I'm one of those guys screaming at street signs. I wake up in the morning and I'm just disgusted that I lived through another night. Our book talks about the terror, bewilderment, and despair that only an alcoholic can feel, and I understand that. I love Bill's descriptive writings throughout that book because he just nails it in so many places in there, and nobody knows that loneliness that an alcoholic can feel. And even still, I felt that after being sober for several years in a room full of people at a roundup or different places too. I could still find myself being alone in those areas of my life, and even surrounded by people. And so that was one of the things that I absolutely realized that my disease loves that. My disease loves me separated. My disease loves me at home, not with you, not interacting. I don't want to answer my phone. I don't want to take that newcomer to the meeting. I really don't want to go to that meeting myself. I still have a lot of these characteristics. What I've done throughout my whole sobriety is this contrary action I do when I don't feel like something. I have to identify it and I go. I get in the truck and I go. And 9 times out of 10, when I go to that meeting I don't want to go to, or I go pick that newcomer up, or I answer my phone in the middle of the night, I do it. I feel better after I've done it. These are all the things my sponsor said to me when I was new that didn't make any sense at all. Wash the coffee cups. I didn't like half the things that he said to me really at any point either. I'd call him some mornings and tell him how I was feeling and what was going on, and he'd tell me to go to a meeting and help someone. And a lot of times he'd hang up the phone. I just didn't really care for that much for that man, and bless his heart, he absolutely saved my life. And so what happens through that is, so I'm just a drunk. I'm a gutter drunk. I'm in the street. I'm the guy laying in front of the door at the Sinclair gas station in my vomit that people can't even open the door to get in. I mean, it's just horrible what's happened to my life, right? And I don't care. This is the biggest thing is I don't care. I'm waiting to die. I can't throw myself in front of a trunk. And you don't dare make eye contact with me because I scream. And I'm going to scream and yell, and I'm really a nasty, nasty individual when I'm in my cups. And so I'm laying in the bushes one morning and coming out of a blackout, and there's the sheriff's department there, and they're pulling me out of the bushes by my feet. And so I'm about 127 pounds at the time, and I never went easy. I always thought I had to fight with the cops, right? And so I'm going to give them a hard time. You're going to have a hard time getting me in this car. I'm not going down easy. And they always get you in the car. And usually beat up. I'm the guy that comes into jail with a spit mask on, strapped into the chair, and I sit there for 24 hours until I calm down. And that's exactly what happened that morning. I asked them what happened, and they said, well, you ought to know you almost killed somebody last night at the gas station. And I had absolutely no recollection of it. So I got sent to jail. And let me tell you, this isn't the first time I've been to jail. I've been to jail many, many times, 35, 40 times probably every county and city jail in Vegas. I have a failure to appear behind every one of those things. They let me out or they put me on probation. I don't call anyone. I don't go to probation appointments, and I don't do anything. I get out and I go right back to what I'm doing. And so I get taken to jail and I fight this case, and I'm going to go do a 19 to 48 this time up at Indian Springs Prison. And I wasn't really too happy about that. I had never been to prison, but the consequences of my drinking and using had gotten to the point to where I really don't care. I can go do some jail time. You know, it's actually pretty healthy for me to get cleaned up, get some food, and to go back out. Well, this time I'm not getting back out. And they said, you're going to prison this time. And that scared me a little bit. You know, I can talk about all the fears that have encompassed me my entire life that I wasn't aware of until I started working steps. But I don't have to get into that right at this moment. But I can tell you how afraid I was to go to prison because I'd heard all the stories. And so I fought that case. The guy ended up living, and the charges were reduced. But I'm still sitting in jail, and I get with the judge, and I'd always heard that if you're going to go to prison, tell them you want to go to Salvation Army. And so when they bring up the prison word, I say I want to go to Salvation Army. And they said, you're not going to Salvation Army. So I had a visit from a probation officer that I had never seen from one of my last instances that came to see me. She said, how long have you been using drugs and drinking? I said, probably since I was 15 years old. She said, you don't have any drug charges. She said, you've got a lot of alcohol charges. I said, yeah. And she said, do you want to get some help? I said, absolutely, I do. Sign me up, right? I think I'm going to get to the Salvation Army. I got this all worked out. I'm going to get the heat off a little bit. And I'm going to go back to my wonderful life. Now, we talk about this deceptive disease that we struggle with. This is how cunning, baffling, and power this disease is. My disease is telling me that I was all right before I go to prison. I'm living in the bushes, in the dirt. Everything's going to be all right this time, right? Maybe I'll just sell it. I won't do it. Or if I could just meet her. Right? So all these things that go through my mind. I can get the heat off enough to go have a good life. Maybe I'll get a job. So what happens is, the job word. So what happens is, I get sent, I wait 7 months in custody because they kept losing my paperwork at Salvation Army. So finally, I had basically expired my sentence, and the judge is saying, we can't hold him anymore. He's expired his sentence. We have to let him go. And I'm fine. Let me go. I'll go to Salvation Army myself in the morning. They said, we've got to let him go. He's expired his sentence sitting here. We can't keep him anymore. And the judge says, he's going through the stack of paperwork, of course. And she says, no, I think we'll hold him for 30 more days. God, I almost got out. So during this 30 days, I get a call from Salvation Army. They call my name. They say, we're pulling you out. You're going to rehab. Yay, rehab. So, what happens is I get sent to Salvation Army. Now, I've been in jail for 7 months. I get there, I'm 127 pounds. I don't have any shoes. My pants won't button. I put on weight. I have a shirt that's up to here now, too. And I'm probably pushing 180, 190 pounds there now. I've been eating that good jail food. But I wasn't eating anything before, so I'm putting on weight. And so I go into this Salvation Army, and they sit you down on a bench before you do your intake. I saw all these guys walking around in the Salvation Army, with big books, haircuts, button-down shirts, all cleaned up. Right away, I see all the differences. I am not like these guys. They do not have what I have, right? I'm gonna get through this. I'm gonna get the heat off, and I'm gonna get back out there. And so what happens is I get all my paperwork done. I get into Salvation Army, and so I grew up in Reno, Nevada. So what happens in Reno, Nevada when you're young and you're not a drunk or a drug addict yet is we had the Truckee River there. So right through town, we would go fishing every afternoon after school. That's what we did. That was our childhood, great childhood, right? While walking down the river, some of the areas where we fish, we see these guys sleeping on cardboard, drunks, sleeping on cardboard that have been there all night that are absolutely homeless bums. Now, I didn't realize this till I got to Salvation Army. But this is what my life had turned into. I'm one of those guys then, and I think back to those times when we were fishing. I think, why don't you get a job or clean yourself up or get out of? Why are you sleeping by the river? We're trying to fish here and recreate and so there's a guy that comes in one night. His name's Gus, and I still see him in Reno. He comes in one night and he talks about because what happens at Salvation Army. I don't know if any of you are familiar, but you go to work for 8 hours a day. You're in your seat there, you go to work for 8 hours a day, and then you're in 3 hours of meetings. And so this 3 hours of meetings, this steady parade of AAs comes through there, and I never understood. I said, where do they keep getting these guys? That they come in here all shined up, they come in and one right after another, and there's different ones every night. They come in with their big books and they tell us how great our life's going to be if we get sober, and like, these guys just keep coming and coming and coming. I've turned into one of those guys, by the way. But what happens with this is they just keep coming. I heard something that night with Gus. I heard something that touched me. I've been there 30 days, and I've been announcing myself as an alcoholic. I'm carrying my big book around like everyone else is, and something happened. Something touched my heart that night. I started to really realize what was happening. I started opening my big book. I started with the stories first, and I started reading those stories in the back of the book. So I don't know about you guys, but what happens for a guy like me when I start reading those stories in the back of the book, and I'm reading them out of sheer boredom, because these guys go on and on and on, and these meetings at the podium, I'm like, they just keep coming, and so I start reading these stories, and I start identifying as an alcoholic. I'm finding myself on every page in the back of that book, and I'm having, and I believe some of the first of a spiritual awakening that a guy like me is capable of having at that time was getting through those stories and actually realizing and coming back and talking to my roommate, and I'm like, hey, you know what? I might have what these guys have. Oh, you think? We'd already talked for several hours, you know, and lots of time up to that point. You know, my place here today is not to actually determine if someone's an alcoholic. It's just to help them if they think they are, and I realized that today. And so something happened for me. Started reading my book. I got a sponsor. I started going through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. So, you know, through the interim, I'm going to these counseling meetings once a week with this counselor at Salvation Army. Now, this guy had never done a drink or a drug in his life. He had some degrees on the wall, but he had no practical experience. And he actually had never had a drink. And his name was Charlie. And I could work this guy over. I could manipulate him and work him over every week. I told him exactly what he wanted to hear. I told him exactly what I needed to say. And I came out of there with another stripe on my... What happens, you phase up. I'm phasing up and I'm going through this. Well, he had an intern that came there to fit in on his one-on-one sessions with me, and this intern was an old heroin addict. And so I'm leaving one afternoon, pretty proud of myself for how I worked this guy over again. And this guy's name was Mark, rest his soul, he's gone now, and he grabbed me by the shoulder and he said, when are you going to stop bullshitting yourself? What are you talking about? He said, I've listened to this shit for a month now, and every one of your sessions, he says, you're one of those guys, you're going to die. You're going to die if you don't face these facts and then get real with yourself. And I was pretty upset. I was a little offended that he would talk to me like that. I don't know you. I don't think you have any degrees on the wall, and I don't. He was working on his stuff. But I was pretty offended at that, and ended up, that gentleman I did my first 4-step with. And I actually started looking at some of the things in my life. So, you know, the bad things that happened to me as a kid don't make me an alcoholic. I know that today. My life's the way it was because of me. I'm the problem. I've always been the problem. And let me tell you something, I didn't like hearing that either. Alcohol and drugs are a pretty easy way out. If I can quit doing alcohol and drugs, my life's going to get better, and I think this for quite a period of time until somebody says, hey, I hate to break it to you. I get these little spoon-fed bits slowly or little bit by little bit. He said, you know what, alcohol and drugs were never your problem, Scott. This is my sponsor. He said, you're your problem. You're your own worst enemy, and you're your problem. I said, wow. Well, so we've got to do some work, right? You get to do the work. And the way it works out now is it doesn't ever stop. So, I get out of Salvation Army. I go through my 4 months of Salvation Army. I get out. I have 7 months in jail. I have almost 4 months in Salvation Army. I'm working on a year sober. I hadn't had a year. I hadn't had a year sober probably since I was 6 or 7 years old. And so what happens is I'm thinking a little clearer. I'm working steps. I get to a little club across town, and I'm going to this club, you know, because my life depends on it. And I'm kind of starting to realize this at this point. I'm thinking that I'm going to be able to stay sober. And I get to this little club across town. It was a little house. It's called the Bungalow Club. It's all the way on the east side of town over in Las Vegas. and it's just this little ratty old house with a little old lady that lives in the back. It comes out in her pajamas, and a bunch of cats and couches in there, and just really kind of a nasty little place. But I'm sure that house saved my life. So I start going to these meetings, and what happens is I've got nothing to do because I'm not working, and I'm renting a little shed for $100 a month. It's a pretty nice shed. I'm pretty grateful that I'm living indoors and I'm staying sober. And one of the guys at that club says, "Here's the key to the club. You're here every morning. Why don't you start making coffee?" "Well, I can make coffee." "Sure." He gave me that key to that club, and you know what? It's been years and years since I've had a key to anything. I was so proud of that key. I wore it around my neck. I got to that club in the morning, and I washed those coffee cups, and I made that coffee, and I started cleaning the floor and taking care of the house a little bit, and then I've been a carpenter all my life, so the place needed repairs, and so I'm staying busy, taking care of this little club, right? And I'm going to these meetings. I start chairing meetings, and I get my year. They give me a cake. I'm thinking, well, this is amazing. I haven't had a cake in a long time, and I'm going through these motions. And one summer, I talked to my sponsor, and I tell him, you know what? I'm really on the edge. It's 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I really feel like drinking a beer. In the construction business, we drink beer every afternoon. Until it gets bad, we start drinking beer in the morning, but every afternoon. And this hot business, and that cold beer sure sounds good. You say, well, keep a cold bottle of water in your hand, first of all, and at all times. And he said, second thing is, I want you to take care of this lawn. This is a dirt patch with a weed in the center. He said, I want you to start watering this lawn and taking care of this lawn. I'm here. I can water the mud. Come and water the mud an hour early. I can do that. So I'm out there one day watering the dirt, and one of the guys that I know in Las Vegas, I know him well now, but he didn't realize it was an AA club. He said, hey, what is this place? I said, it's the bungalow club. It's great. We have AA meetings. He said, what are you doing? So I'm watering the dirt. He says, well, why are you watering the dirt? I said, well, my sponsor told me to. And he shared this later on down the road. He said, I knew then this kid's probably going to stay sober. He called me a kid. I was 50. So anyway, what happens is I take care of this lawn all summer, right? Somebody brings me some grass seed. I'm watering the dirt. Someone brings me some grass seed. Somebody else brings some manure. Pretty soon I've got grass coming up. And then I love seeing the mothers and kids in AA meetings and in the clubs. I really do. I don't think it's ever a disturbance. And so there was a lot of kids and single moms that would come there, and they had a place to play out on the grass. And pretty soon I got this beautiful lawn out there. Someone brings me a lawnmower. I've got like over in the ghetto on the east side of Las Vegas. And I'm out there with a hose and a lawnmower, and I tell my sponsor, it was near the end of summer, I'm like, look what I did. You know, look what I've done here. He says, what are you talking about? I said, look at my beautiful lawn. You know, I did all this summer. He said, no, Scott, you stayed sober this summer. That's what you did. You needed something to do, and we found something for you, and that's how it worked. And I do the same thing with the guys that I sponsor now today, too. So you need something to keep busy, because I can be thinking too much. I get stuck in Scotland, and it's a bad neighborhood, right? My wife gives me a hard time about that. My beautiful wife's here tonight. We've just celebrated our 6-year wedding anniversary, and she's 11 years sober, and and I got to Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't know how to be in a relationship. I'd had a lot of hostages, and I'd had a lot of bad things happen, and I had to learn from the men in Alcoholics Anonymous how to carry myself around a woman, and carry myself in Alcoholics Anonymous, carry myself with grace and dignity. I think the greatest thing that I can be here, you know, at the end when it's all said and done, I'm going to be an 8.5 by 11 flyer on a table somewhere when I pass. I'd like people to have some good things to say about me. I think if the end goal is to be a good member of Alcoholics Anonymous when I die, without somebody to say, yeah, but that's the big deal. I think that's the goal here. And so I had to learn that too. So what happens is I get a job at Salvation Army. I start working. I thought I'd go to work in the warehouse or something there, and they said, no, we want you to come to work up in the rehab. We want you to come to work at the front desk, and we want you to be an assistant resident manager. Now, my people skills are very poor, and I'm still pretty antisocial. I don't like people. I don't want to be around a lot of people, and I had a really hard time with that because I'd been 3 years by myself on the streets, and it was really an adjustment. So this old man that was there, his name was Joe Lozzie, and he got me through the Salvation Army. He really did, because I was mean, I was nasty, and I didn't want to be there. I didn't like people. I didn't know how to be around people. I didn't know how to interact with people. All of those things. I'm a horrible individual. Just mean and nasty. People stayed away from me most of the time. And they put me to work in the kitchen there during my stay, and I was really upset because I've been a carpenter, and I know they needed me on that construction crew. And when I applied for the construction crew, they put me in the kitchen. I guess they figured they were going to humble me up one way or another, and so I got put in the kitchen, and I had a hard time working there. You know, I had fights, and I threw some, big stack of eggs at a guy one day, and I'm in Joe Lozzie's office again, and Joe saw something in me. He'd have me in his office, and he'd tell me, Scott, you can do this. You can make it. You can walk out the door right now. Your probation officer wants you as soon as you do. But you can leave right now. These doors aren't locked. And he'd talk me down again, and I'd come through, and I'd go apologize, and I'd make it through another day, and that's how it was for me. And that's how it was for me my first 2 years sober. Just get through another day was all it was. And so I get through this point. I'm working on my second year sober. I get a job at Salvation Army. I'm making $8.25 an hour, and I buy a little car. And it has my license plates on it and my insurance on it, and I get my driver's license back for the first time. And it was funny when I was at DMV, because I'd had so many criminal charges and so many DUIs that all this stuff had been taken care of. When I'm at the DMV, she called one of her friends over as they were doing the printout, because it was all going away. We watched it on the screen, all these charges that had been paid for and time served and done, and I came out of there clear, and I felt like $1 million. Now I'm starting to feel like a member of society. I say starting, because not yet, but I'm starting to feel like maybe I'm going to be able to do this, and maybe I'm going to be able to be one of these people that can hold a job and have a life, because I never really had. I've seen my parents do it. I've seen other people do it, but I'm just coming from the streets. I come in here so busted and beaten, and with such low self-esteem. I don't think a guy like me has a chance. And so what happens is, I'm standing on the club, so I'm working at Salvation Army. I'm still going to meetings as often as I can. And I'm going to the Triangle Club, and I'm going to the Bungalow Club, and I'm just going into these meetings, and I'm standing out on the porch in one of these places one day, and a guy comes up to me, one of the old-timers, and he says, you know what? He says, Scott, how you doing today? I'm always great, right? Fine. I'm fine. He says, are you praying? I said, oh, yeah, I do this, man. He said, you're one of those guys. He said, you're one of those guys. You better start praying to something today. I didn't really like hearing that, because I thought I had been praying. And so he sat down with me, and he actually showed me some things, and showed me some areas in the big book, and showed me some things that I should start doing in my daily routine, to where I could start, acquiring a connection with this higher power, because I had none up to this point. And I'm really lucky I stayed sober for those 2 years without it. Because I know today, without God in my life, I can't stand a chance. So this is how it happened for me. I'm working. I got my little job, and I've got my meetings, and I'm starting these meeting schedules. I get a meeting commitment, and I start going to big book studies, and I start going to men's meetings, and I start getting sober. I work steps like my life depends on it. I pray like my life depends on it, and my life starts to change. Incrementally. I believe that I've had several spiritual awakenings throughout my 14 and a half years. Several. I don't believe there's been one burning bush experience. I believe there's been several areas in my life where it's obviously been, there's no other explanation for what's happened, and it's got to be God, right? And I've got to start looking at that. And I don't look at it, I don't see what's happening in my life, but I see what's happening in your life. And I think I'm so unique when I get here. I'm so special and so terminally unique that nobody had a life like mine, or you'd have drank and done what I did too. And I get to Alcoholics Anonymous, and especially when I start working steps with a sponsor, and I realize that I'm not that unique. I burned my life to the ground. Alcohol and drugs were but a symptom of my disease, and I'm doomed. And I don't realize that till I start going through these steps. I get to my 9th step, go through these steps. I do a lot of self-searching and a lot of stuff that was uncomfortable. And before that, I get to my 9th step, and I've got my sister. I've got one sister in Ohio, and I've got one sister in Las Vegas. Now, my sister in Las Vegas, I never knew where she lived. We had lost contact years and years ago. She did not want me to have her address, and I don't blame her. And so my other sister in Ohio, Tammy and I decide one year that we're going to go out. We're going to fly out to Ohio. We're going to go to Akron and see Dr. Bob's house. And I'm going to go see my sister, and I'm going to go make amends. And my sponsor, leading up to this point, because I really don't want to do this, because it's really going to be uncomfortable, and I really don't want to admit my faults, and I really don't want to ask how I can make any of this right, and I just don't want to have the conversation. So he says, well, let's start with this. The least you could do is let her know you're alive. You've been out on the streets for 3 years. You're a couple of years sober now, so it's been about 5 years since I talked to my sister. And so we talked to my sister, and we go out to Ohio, and I'm able to sit down with my sister and make amends for being the horrible brother that I was. I talked to her one night when I was homeless, and I needed $40 for some food, and she had decided that she wasn't going to help me anymore. And I hung up on her and told her to have a nice life. That was the last time we spoke. And so I was able to sit down with my sister and have a great weekend with my nieces and her family now, and came back on the airplane. I read Drop the Rock back on the airplane after I'd done this, and it was just powerful for me. I'm getting, if you're following this story a little bit, I'm getting a little more sober each one of these years. And so, what happens to that point is Tammy and I get married. Tammy hunts down my sister in Las Vegas. We were able to fly my other sister out from Ohio and her family to come out and stay in our home for the week during this wedding. And my sister Chris shows up. And my sister Chris is a school teacher, and I verbally abused and hurt her too. And she came out and to this wedding, and we opened up the lines of communication. And I asked my sponsor how I'm supposed to do this, and he said, well, you're supposed to start by just telling her you love her. He said, let's not get into any of your 9th step work now. Just let her know you're okay. And that's what it started with for her. And so we tried to go to dinner with them every couple of weeks or so. My brother-in-law is 20-plus years sober. I had sat down with him to make amends because, I'd been living in one of their houses for about 6 months and never paid any rent, never did anything. So I sat down with him one day at lunch, and I asked him what I can do to make it right. And he said, Scott, I always wondered. He said, I'm 20 years sober myself. And that really touched me. And he said he hadn't been to a meeting in about 16 years. And that made me cringe a little bit. So what happened when I got back from a trip one weekend is he called me, and he said, Scott, I need to go to a meeting. Things are really, really bad. Now, the fact that he came to me for this is special, too. So I took him to a meeting. I took him to a men's meeting there in Las Vegas, and he was really sick. And he was sober a long time, and I really don't think he was going to drink. I think he was gonna do something really stupid, and those men in that meeting surrounded him. I watched them surround him, and he had a sponsor, and he worked steps, and he started going to that men's meeting. And my sister called me one day, and she said, I want to thank you for what you've done for Bruce. And I said, Chris, I didn't do it. I didn't do anything but what we're supposed to do here in Alcoholics Anonymous. My primary purpose here is to help another alcoholic, and I truly believe that my primary purpose on this earth is to help as many people as I can today. And trying to be a good human being, I've got to make up for a lot of wreckage. So I try every day to be a good human being, or a better human being than I was yesterday. And that's really tough for a guy like me. Still got a really bad ego. I've still got a lot of character defects that I get to work on every day. One of the things I love about Alcoholics Anonymous is this isn't over. I get to continue this work, and I get to keep doing what I'm doing, and that's the special thing. We're very blessed today. Tammy and I own a couple sober living houses in Las Vegas. They're program houses where they are not forced, but you're going to go to AA meetings, and you're going to get a sponsor, and you're going to work steps if you're going to live here, or you're going to live somewhere else. She has a women's house, and I have a men's house, and we're very fortunate that we get to work with these people and watch their lives change. And not all of them, but quite a few. So, it's really special that we get to do that and get to participate in their recovery too. So we're really hands-on people in that field. And then, I've been blessed with my trade. I have a small construction company today, and, our life is good. We have a very spiritual home. She's in women's meetings, and I'm in men's meetings, and we have our sponsees. She has her sponsees, and I have mine, and a lot of times we're shifts just passing in the night during the week, and we get to talk about that on the weekends, and this is the life, right? All I ever wanted to do was to be happy. All I ever wanted to do was why can't I be like him? Why am I such racked with fear and anxiety my whole entire life? Why can't I just feel good? And that's what I chased for years and years and years. And we hear it all the time until it stops working. And that's exactly what happened for me. It stopped working. I'm stuck with me. So, I don't know how many newcomers you're here. I can't see anymore out here. But I really hope you're here. I really hope you heard something tonight. It all has to be with a group of people like this. Maybe one or two people hear something. Maybe you've got a chance. Maybe you can stay another day. That's how it was for me. I think I held onto that chair some of those days, just held onto it and hit my pillow sober and get back to another meeting the next day and go through all these things that we're told and asked to do and suggested to do that don't make any sense when I knew. A lot of it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't have to make sense. You don't have to have a great big prayer life right now. You don't have to have any of that. You have to be here. You have to be sober. You have to just start. And that's what it is, because you've got your whole life to work on this recovery and work on yourself. And that's how it's been for me. So I'm really, really grateful that you guys asked me to be here tonight. I hope that somebody heard something, and from the bottom of my heart, I'm not that kid standing in the corner of the playground anymore. I'm not dangerously antisocial anymore. I can, one of the things with the roundups, I get to give a lot of these talks in a lot of different places, and one of the things with the roundups when there's a couple thousand people out there is you have the lights facing the stage. So that blocks off half of the people back behind there, so that helped me a lot, and people said, well, just picture them naked or do something. I don't want to get into that. So I just go with the light, and so, one of the things with that is just being here and being present. I want to be a good human being today, and I want to be a good member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's basically it. And so I really get to do that today. So thank you everybody for listening to me for however long that was.
We have something for you here.